Assalamu alaikum and hello everybody. This is Dr. Ameena Al-Deen from Muslim Network TV and my program Critical Talk. Today we're going to be talking about an exciting new venture called the Greenwood Policy Institute. And to talk about it, I don't want to presage it, but it's a very important African American Muslim response to the issues of the day. And also, in addition to responses, is commentary, but it's also bringing the larger community's attention to some very important ideas. I don't know, institutions, complications in society, etc. So, if you'll bear with me, I'm out here in sunny Maryland, and all the birds have decided to join me on my show. I will bring on the board members, minus a couple, of Greenwood Policy Institute. I'm going to turn it over to um, Abdullah Mitchell, who is the president of Greenwood Policy Institute. I'm going to ask my producer to mute the mics and let him introduce board members.
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. Welcome, Muslim Network TV audience. My name is Gregory Abdullah Mitchell. By profession, I'm an attorney. Currently, I serve as an executive director for a nonprofit organization here in Chicago. And let me also introduce now the other members of the board. To my I guess as I face to my left is Ameena Mitchell, serving as the secretary of the Greenwood Policy Institute. To my far left is our host of Critical Talk, Dr. Ameena Al-Deen, as a board member. Immediate below her is Imam Frederick Al-Deen, a board member, and then immediately below me, to the far right, is our good sister Dr. Nisa Muhammad, also a board member. Missing today is our treasurer, Anthony Naeem Simpkins, who is also an attorney and board, serves as the treasurer for our organization.
Well, let me start off by asking you, why Greenwood? Why this organization? Why is it necessary?
Well, I think for us as African Americans, that really doesn't need to be answered. But let me use recent events to highlight. As we look back on May of 2020 and we saw the murder of George Floyd, for many of us as African Americans, it notwithstanding how one may become numb to the continued onslaught of injustices, systemic racist policies that one confronts, but it hit a nerve that how could another human being be murdered live, choked to death under the name of police control or enforcement, law enforcement. So it woke up, and maybe as another catalyst to spark the need for a voice, an African American voice, another African American voice, and more particularly a Muslim American African American voice to speak to issues impacting our community, to share how we see these issues through our particular lens as Muslims and as African Americans, having lived our lives here in this country, and to understand, to raise awareness of the injustices and the examples of systemic racism that continue to negatively impact our community locally and across the nation?
Well, also, African American Muslims have opinions about all things Islam in America. We have opinions on how terrorism is received and understood and uh, broadcast and written about. We have opinions on Islamophobia. And is it really anti Muslim bigotry, or is it really a hatred of Islam? We have opinions on what's happening in Congress today. So, isn't it all of those things in addition to the things that plague the African American community in particular?
Clear that maybe is a fuller addressing of the situation. But once again, I think it's important that we give voice to this segment of the community that sometimes gets marginalized in the within the other demographics of the Muslim community, to make sure our voice is heard and accounted for as we address various issues, whether it relates to social justice, economic justice, injustices, whatever that may be. Our voice needs to be heard and shared with the insights that are framed particularly by not only our life experience here in the United States, but our personal religious beliefs.
I think that that is so important. Dr. Nisa, um, since African Americans are the descendants of the first Muslims brought to this country forcibly and have initiated or established some of the first Muslim communities, why is it the case in 2021 that immigrants represent American Muslims?
It's a systemic racism. First of all, assalamu alaikum, and thank you for having me on your show again. I'm so very
You're
happy to be
welcome.
here. So I think it's a continuation of what Abdullah talked about, the systemic racism. And now it's the systemic erasure of African American Muslims in all things Islam. And so what happened is, when the influx of Muslims came with the immigration laws, with the change of the immigration laws, they began to see themselves as the Muslims. And America also began to see them as the Muslims, and Black Muslims had to began to take a step backwards, and almost to the point of considering themselves as interlopers in a faith that they had been here celebrating since they landed on the shores. And so it's a really horrible expression of anti-Blackness within our own faith. And so we just got tired of seeing other than self represented as the face of Islam. And we know that Islam comes in all shades, and we have a voice to speak for ourselves.
Imam Al-Deen, add to this conversation.
Well, I see the Greenwood Policy Institute. First of all, assalamu alaikum again, and thank you for inviting me to this program. I see the Greenwood Policy Institute as being the opportunity for African American Muslims to test the proposition stated in the religion that when we are intellectually prepared, socially connected, and practicing our faith, we represent a very potent resource or tool to address the issues and concerns of the society around us, our internal society, and the society around us. Can we, as African American Muslims, based our actions and words and studies on the history that has been ours here in the United States, use the guiding principle of Islam and intellectual achievement to address and resolve problems of import to our society? And that the immigrants have taken over that identity is an opportunity for us to be competitive and see if we can establish ourselves as a group that has a meaning and import and a wide range of interests in the various audiences that exist in the society. So I see it as a chance for us to compete and show our mettle, show our stuff, and in the process of doing that, solve problems that are critical to the nation.
Ameena Mitchell, who is always insightful. What do you have to add to these wonderful descriptions?
Well, I think it's I think the George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter protests uh, kind of accentuated what I think we had thought about and were witnessing uh, before those events. The fact that as African American Muslims, we have an insight that needs to be part of the Muslim voice, and it too often is not. It's um, it's silenced or spoken over so that we're not heard. And I think that what Greenwood Policy Institute, its inception was because of that, because we didn't want to be silenced or spoken over so that uh, nobody hears what we have to say, because eventually we will be erased. I mean, that's about the best way I can put it.
Okay, we're going to take a moment or two break. And when we come back, I'm going to ask my producer to put up on the screen um, the website of Greenwood Policy Institute so we can comment on what we're trying to do, what is the significance of Greenwood itself, the title, and what are some of the things we're putting forth. This is Dr. Ameena Al-Deen with Muslim Network TV and Critical Talk, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Dr. Ameena Al-Deen with Muslim Network TV and my program Critical Talk. Today we're talking with members of the board of Greenwood Policy Institute. And I would like to ask the producer to put up the homepage of the website for Greenwood Policy Institute. Can you go down? I mean, make that a full page. We can only see half of it. No, go down. Let's go back to the pictures. Okay, one of the things that the Policy Institute seems to want to highlight is social justice. And I'm just going to ask one of you to please comment on those pictures.
I'll comment. I'm gonna preface my comment with a quote from John Brown Russwurm, who started Freedom's Journal 1827, and he says, "We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. Too long has the public been deceived by misrepresentation and things which concern us dearly. And so these pictures reflect the things that concern us dearly. And for too long, others have spoken as a guise for all Muslims, and they have not spoken to the hurt and pain that affects Black Muslims, that affect Black people, that affect marginalized people, that affect oppressed people. And so we are here to say, we are raising our voices in support of the people around the world that are oppressed, that are marginalized, that are forgotten, that are lost, and that sometimes feel like nobody cares. But we want to make their stories known, and we want to make their stories heard from an African American Muslim perspective.
Okay, let's inch down just a little bit to some quotes. There's a quote section, and I'm gonna leave that to Ameena Mitchell. I don't know if you can see it. Can we make that larger? Okay. Well, maybe we'll focus on the first one and we can make that one larger so she can be reminded of it. So we have Maya Angelou, a favorite in the African American community, talking about the ravages of social unrest. Ameena?
And I think we tried to choose these quotes so that they were not just about social justice, but the food for thought as well. And Maya Angelou's quote reminds us that not only do you have to catch stuff, you got to throw it back too. And I think that, in fact, this quote is very much what Greenwood Policy Institute is about. That you are catching stuff, but at the same time, you've got to put some force and throw it back, and throwing something is very much proactive, and catching something is reactive. And so
Keep
Maya
going.
Angelou is saying we've got to be proactive.
Keep going. We got Mahatma Gandhi.
You must be the change you wish to see in the world. In fact, it almost follows, comes directly in line with Maya Angelou's quote, so that if you're going to change the world, you have to be part of the change. That and this is again proactive. You got to throw it back, and when you're throwing it back, you are changing something. So and the next one, I guess all three are Frederick Douglass. I'm not sure about that one.
Yeah, that's the quote.
And it's just a reminder that if you want to change something, if there's the world's largest country, if you're counting all the unemployed, is the fifth largest. That
Isn't that something?
if you're going to if all of them are changing something, then you're going to see a change in the world too, and it has to begin somewhere. Just like the next quote says, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So in that we address injustice on our website and in the other activities that follow, we are, again, going back to that first quote, throwing it back. We're not catching it, we're throwing it.
Do we have another quote on that page, or is that it?
Of Frederick Douglass?
Oh, we have one last one.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But all of them are about being proactive, and that's what Greenwood Policy Institute is all about. I don't know if it's a word, proactivity.
Yeah.
African American Muslims about who we are in this world and what we think about this world and how we see this world should change in order to be better.
Yeah. Imam Al-Deen, Maria, can you go over to the Quranic? I don't think it's Quranic. Um, to the saying in green. Can you make that larger? That's going to be a challenge, huh?
Yeah, very much so.
Oh, oh gosh. Okay. Let me see if she can do it. There you go. Could you just read that? Can you see it?
If you wish good for someone else, your risk of provision won't decrease if you pray for him to be granted that good. It won't become a reason for your deprivation. If you strive for him that which benefits him, it will diminish your worth. And ponder upon the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, glorified be he. Whosoever intercedes for a good cause will have the reward of that thereof. Be beneficial and remember that reward is of the actions type, i.e., as you do, you get. And so whoever facilitates for others finds facilitation. In other words, Allah is reminding us that Allah is very bounteous in all things good. And if you support someone else in achieving a bounty or a reward, you do not diminish your share of that bounty or reward. So act for others and you benefit yourself.
Gets bigger, it's painful at times. It has a ring that it grows out of that is very tender. It's a horn.
Am I muted?
We hear you. We don't hear you, Dr. Al-Deen. We don't hear you. You're muted. We don't hear you, Dr. Al-Deen.
Okay. Is there a TV on somewhere? Because we hear in the background a lot of noise, but hopefully our audience heard all of that we thought that the continual marrying of the Quran with what we're talking about is critical. I'm going to ask Attorney Mitchell to please go ask Maria first to go to the About Us page and for Attorney Mitchell to take over. Who are you? Make that larger? Because you're talking to old eyes here.
Well, let me just read the definition on the website for benefit of the audience. Greenwood Policy Institute is a nonpartisan, independent public policy research organization providing scholarly analysis, commentary, policy recommendations, and evidence-based findings for the benefit of political, economic, and social policy makers and the general public relative to issues affecting African Americans in the United States from an African American Muslim perspective. Our goal is to provide service through scholarship, research, debate, education, and advocacy. You know, the comments made thus far by the members of the board, and one is still resonating me as Dr. Muhammad's point about the importance of the African American Muslims' voice being added to the discussion of these issues. Really, once again, speaks to who we are and what our intent is. As I said, that general descriptive really describes us as our function as a policy institute. Here's what we want to bring scholarship, and particularly from an African American perspective, but more personally, we have experienced these injustices. We have family members and those are neighbors who continue to experience these injustices, whether it's economic, social, political.
Mm-hmm.
These have to be addressed, and as once again, there cannot be these points be marginalized and made to fit under a worldview of different cultures under the umbrella that this is Islam. We bring a unique perspective. It is an objective to give voice to that particular perspective and give it its weight in the public sphere as we debate solutions to the problems that affect us not only in the African American community but in our nation as a whole.
Well, I thank you for that, and you have brought us to our next little mini break. And I would ask all of you to turn off, I mean, not, turn off stuff that is interfering with the transmission. I'm going to ask my producer to mute everybody except the person talking. This is Dr. Ameena Al-Deen from Muslim Network TV and Critical Talk, and I am speaking with Greenwood Policy Institute. We'll be right back. Assalamu alaikum. This is Dr. Ameena Al-Deen with Muslim Network TV and the program Critical Talk. Today we're talking with members of the board of Greenwood Policy Institute. And I would like to ask, let me see when he gets up here, Imam Al-Deen, to tell us if you could take us to the page where the articles are put up. Yeah, that one. Articles and discussions. And down a little bit to, let me see. The article I want to look at is Emmett Till's stuff. Where is that? Yes. Closing Emmett Till's casket, because that's kind of where Greenwood has begun. Could you tell us a little bit about that article?
It's been a minute since I've looked at it, but the article addresses the issue of the infamous assassination of Emmett Till and the
1954.
I believe it was right, yes, and the effort by his mother to have the damage done to her son not covered up in a traditional funeral, but to be exposed so that people could see what was done to him, and basically to expose the vitriol and aggressiveness of some members of this culture to the public view, and let them understand the background of some of the activities that have been taken against African Americans.
And its relationship to George Floyd?
George Floyd's assassination was a modern day version of the Emmett Till assassination, and serves as a clarion call to the rest of us that the job of establishing justice for Emmett Till was not completed, and that we have to use the opportunity of the Floyd incident to try to close the door on that type of actions against African Americans forever.
Great. Now, just to show the scope, Attorney Mitchell, you have an article on non-for-profit organizations. Can you take us to that, please, Marielle? And non-for-profit organizations notoriously uh, have issues. It's up at the top.
Right.
Oh, there it is. Okay. So you want to tell us a little bit about that article?
Yes. The purpose of the article, and the reason we felt it was important to share these insights, is to be a reminder, let's say, well-intended individuals who are moving forward to address various social problems, whether it's through a food pantry, it says tutoring, voter registration, whatever, let's say, intentions will guide their actions. But to the extent that they become a group of people operating, it's to remind them that they should adopt a legal entity structure. I become a nonprofit corporation. And then to the extent that they do, that they follow the prescribed guidelines for its effective creation, and operation, and management. Too often, well-intended individuals may start the process, don't follow the regulations, and suddenly the organization is dissolved, as the IRS is continuing looking closer at nonprofit organizations as shams around to verify that they are bona fide or originate for a nonprofit purpose for the benefit of the social economic well-being of the community at large. And to the extent that reports are not filed, minutes are not maintained, we just wanted to be kind of like a little checklist and serve as a reminder to our audience that these are, let's say, the best practices for you, regardless of what your particular mission is, to follow to maximize your effectiveness in how you go about serving our community.
Yeah, I think a lot of organizations suffer from that. And because they don't have all their ducks in a row, they then are ineligible for grants, organizations, or community help organizations. They miss out on everything because the ducks are not in a row.
Well, I mean, and really, there's another critical point that you're mentioning. I think many of us don't recognize that the government lacks the capacity or the bandwidth to address all the issues that it is called on to address. And they partner with nonprofit organizations and sometimes private sector to effectuate any kind of policy underlying various laws that are passed. Most recently, as we have experienced this, the effects of this pandemic, the government has turned to institutions to help provide assistance to families in need of help with paying their rent or utilities, help businesses reestablish themselves. And to the extent that you want to make sure your community benefits this, not relying on an outside organization to make sure it identifies the needs in your community, it's important that you're properly formulated. You're not gonna get awarded any grants through any state or even now private foundations unless you have not only be a nonprofit, but you've been received tax exempt status through the Internal Revenue Service. That's the 501c3 designation. To work with particular grants, they're monitoring. It's going to be necessary to have your books audited. It's going to be necessary to register with the federal government and here in the state of Illinois, with the state of Illinois to be registered as a potential grant recipient. These small things that if you don't have in place, you can't even get to the table. And to the extent that we fail to do this, then some of these critical services we're depending on others to make sure they're delivered in our community as needed.
Okay. I mean that is critical, crucial information. Dr. Nisa, you wrote an article taking us in a different direction about Black farmers.
Yes.
Hopefully, my producer can find that article. Tell us a little bit about it.
So Black farmers have been struggling almost from the very beginning. And so my article talks about how the COVID relief bill signed into law may finally be an opportunity for Black farmers to get some help. But I'm going to do a follow-up article because now the Black farmers have been put on pause because white farmers have gone to court to say this is discrimination against us. So this article talks about the aid money that was put in the COVID relief bill to provide some relief for Black farmers who had been discriminated against historically. And it was a great bill. People loved it. Black farmers felt like, okay, maybe we can get some help now. But the white farmers went to court. And so this aid for Black farmers has been put on pause. So I'm working on a follow-up article that explains where exactly the Black farmers are right now in this whole issue.
Well, I think farmers, agriculture, those kinds of things are rarely thought about, but they're very important to us. And so this article brings attention, and it's not last or least, but I think my producer can get over to a video, and I'm going to ask Ameena Mitchell to talk with us about why we also, no, it's under articles and discussions, but it has a person's face on the front of it because it has run. There you go. It's over there on discussion. Why? Let's play just a little bit of it, like 3 minutes. Can we play it?
We can't hear it.
Oh, sure. I knew Streamwood wouldn't be that great for us.
Oh, yeah, we cannot hear it.
Uh,
Maybe you need to raise the volume. Raise the YouTube volume.
oops. Okay. Well, while we're thinking about that, Ameena, can you tell us about why we did and have begun to put up discussion videos? I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Well, it's another media by which to reach people. A lot of times, things that you learn more from a conversation than you do from a paper that's written. So we thought that this might be a good way to get some ideas out in front about the Chauvin trial. And again, to talk about the perspective of African American Muslims regarding that trial. So it's another way to help people think about and understand our position about uh, a current event.
And even to hear our discussions, because we don't always agree on everything.
Right, right. So you're not getting one perspective, you're getting many.
Yeah.
And then the visual doesn't hurt either. Most people are used to watching the screen and
Okay.
gaining information from there.
Who's going to try it again? Because I think it's fun.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Marianne, go for it. Oh, phooey.
Can't hear. I think that part of what Greenwood Policy Institute does, and with the articles, the pictures, the video, too often when Black people are talking about Black issues, Black Muslims are not included in that conversation. And when Muslims are talking about issues, Black Muslims are not included in that conversation either. And so Greenwood Policy Institute brings to the forefront in all these different ways our perspective on a variety of different issues, from the articles to the pictures to the video. It just shows the diversity, the perplexity, all of what we have to offer to bring within our voices. I think, Imam Frederick, you wanted to say something? You're
In your
muted.
in your article on Black farmers, and to a lesser extent, my article on Emmett Till's casket being closed, we're talking about how policy is a product of working with others who may or may not share your point of view, but you have to try to work with them as best you can to get as much as you can at the moment, and then keep pressing on and try to get more later. We didn't get the lynching bill, the anti-lynching bill that we wanted, but we could have gotten one. And it's important to try to know what you can do, what you can't do, and to try to know when you're moving towards your goals and when you're moving away from them. You have to try to cooperate and work with others.
I think another point is that too often when African American Muslims or African Americans are speaking about some of these issues, we highlight the emotional side rather than looking at it in a more objective frame of reference. And I think that's part of what Greenwood Policy Institute is trying to do. Even though there's an emotional side, we want to stop and take a look at the logical and intellectual side of those issues. Because in the final countdown, that is what people are going to listen to, not how bad you feel, but how you think about it and how logically you can present your position.
And Greenwood is an incident that demonstrates that even though you may achieve success in several areas, if you are not prepared to defend your achievements, if you're not prepared to defend your achievements, it's all for naught. So not only do you have to make policy that's based on sound principles, not only do you have to operate your community based on sound principles, but you have to be able to protect that against aggressors and terrorists in this society.
Very true. We're coming up on our last break while we're off air for a few minutes. Well, not a few, but a couple. I would like to ask this board to think about the issues surrounding vaccines. This is Dr. Ameena Al-Deen, Muslim Network TV, and Critical Talk, and we're talking with Greenwood Policy Institute. We'll be right back. This is Dr. Ameena Al-Deen with Muslim Network TV and the program Critical Talk. We're speaking today with the Greenwood Policy Institute, and we left off with thoughts about the vaccines and African American Muslims who are a little bit divided, and all of us probably don't agree. African Americans have a history, and it's a continuing history. I don't know if you call that history, of people trying to experiment on us in research hospitals across the nation and getting poor medical care. We've been injected, subjected, denied treatment, etc. So, what are some of the thoughts, not your personal thoughts necessarily, but some of the issues around the vaccines for the African American Muslim community? Everybody jump at once.
I think there's trust issues. I think there's trust issues, as you mentioned. They don't trust the vaccine. They don't trust the people giving the vaccine, and so there's vaccine hesitancy.
Here in the Chicagoland area, the Muslim community, at least the leadership of the area, Masajid here in Greater Chicago, have been aggressively pushing information about vaccines, encouraging, sponsoring vaccine events at mosque, or public venues. But yet there is that, like you say, that level of hesitancy, particularly in the African American community, for the reasons cited earlier by you, Dr. Al-Deen. Nonetheless, it is important. I think the challenge, and this is another reason, a role that organizations such as Greenwood Policy Institute can serve, is how do we bring factual information, data that people can look to from trusted sources. Like I said, other sources, like I said, have lied and misled African Americans in the past. But to the extent that we bring a voice that speaks in the best interest of our community, that God willing, that will allay some of the fears and the concerns that people have to, let's say, move forward with the vaccination. And right now it's critical when you look at the data that it's the unvaccinated people who are the ones, nearly 95, 96, 97% of the ones that are being hospitalized and dying from this virus. So it is a challenge. It's a challenge of trust. It's a challenge of credibility, and it's a challenge of messaging, that we can have trusted sources provide the factual data, not just a pep talk to do it, but data that people can rely on and coming to grips with a bad past experience with the medical system, and that deciding to take the necessary protections against this deadly virus.
Ameena Mitchell, jump on it. Wear your mask. I know what she's going to say. Just wear your mask.
Well, actually, as you were talking, I was thinking about how, not that I can say that I know anybody who has said this, but a lot of time Muslims talk about tying your camel. And for some people, this is the idea of tying your camel. But I think that some that don't get the vaccination would say, well, it is as Allah wills. If I'm supposed to get it and get sick and die, alhamdulillah, that's what Allah had deemed for me. So you have those two different opinions about what the vaccine means. So for some, the vaccine it isn't going to stop whatever's going to happen. And the rest of us, me included, are wrapping our camel around that tree.
I think for some other people, it's like they don't do flu shots. They don't do vaccines, before the COVID vaccine came about. So it's not just about the COVID vaccine, but for some people, they just don't do vaccines and flu shots, period. And so there's this whole anti-vaccine community out there that, people are a part of. And so they see this as just another vaccine that they're just not going to take. Like I said, they don't do flu shots. Their children don't do vaccines. And they're just part of this whole anti-vaccine community that's out there. And we may think that, okay, that's just some crazy white people who live in rural areas, but there are Black people who are in the anti-vaccine community as well.
Right. Imam Frederick, let me give you the last word for the moment.
Ever since the 1950s, when pharmaceutical companies realized they could invent illnesses and sell them on TV, it's been a concern that the pharmaceutical industry is all about profit and not about patients. And that once that idea took root, and when there have been some failed releases of medications in the public sphere, the idea is in some people's minds that this is not a good thing to do. Don't jump on every vaccine that they pass as being important for you. So the pharmaceutical industry has been hoisted on its own petard and has to come up with a way to try to sell the good products to us and keep damper down the snake oil that they also sell us over the media. And maybe once they are successful in doing that, people will more willingly come to use medicines that are good for them rather than medicines that are good for capital profits.
Wow. All of these comments, yay and nay, and Greenwood is going to put up another video soon so we can have this conversation. I want to say Jazakallah to all of you. Wait a minute, Attorney Mitchell.
Yes, let me just leave maybe as a parting thoughts to your audience, and let me be quite direct. We've introduced you to key players, the board members for the Greenwood Policy Institute. But in no way, shape, or manner do we perceive ourselves as the sole source of information, opinion, and commentary. We are actively reaching out to other scholars and educated African-American Muslims to contribute to the work that is being done, because the mission is to get the critical evidence-based scholarly research to you, the public, so that you can make informed decisions in guiding your everyday life decisions as they impact you as policymakers impact your life. So I just wanted to add that particular caveat to who Greenwood Policy Institute is and what their mission is.
Good point. Very good point.
That's the close. This is Dr. Ameena Al-Deen for Muslim Network TV and Critical Talk. We have been talking with Greenwood Policy Institute. I hope you take Attorney Mitchell's request and invitation to heart, and that you have enjoyed listening to our program this evening. Assalamu alaikum.